work my tail end off, wasting all of my life working just to barely be able to pay my bills. And
all right, that's enough.
Not Gen Z.
All right, first of all, you work at, you're like, what are you, 20?
Yeah,
like,
barely. Okay, guys, so I think that this would be a good time to do a quick react video to some of the videos that are coming around generational conflict. And a lot of the videos that we're seeing are with Zoomers or Gen Zs complaining about work and the work environment, working the 9 to 5 and working the difficult work schedule, 40-hour work week without getting paid very much, especially in this inflation. So I want to react to it. There's a lot of kickback, a lot of reaction that we see online and circulating. So let me go ahead and share this video and let me know if you guys can see and hear this. Okay, so we'll go through it.
I cannot stand how the news has been dogging Gen Z and calling them lazy for not wanting to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of their lives. Let me put it in perspective for everybody who's a little confused here, okay? I work 5 days out of the week, 40 hours a week, okay? I do not make enough to live on my own. I would not make enough to pay rent, water, electric, and eat. All by myself. I would not be capable of doing that. 20 years ago when you were getting started, you could live on your own. 20 years ago when you first started, you were able to do everything that I am now struggling to do. Let me add another perspective here. You've been working for 20 years. You have 20 years of working experience behind your belt. You have 20 years of experience in a career that has allowed you to gain raises, to get more money, to profit you in an economy that you created. You can sit here and you can call Gen Z lazy all you want, but I've been working my tail end off just to barely make it by. And respectfully, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. I don't want to work my tail end off, wasting all of my life working just to barely be able to pay my bills. And
all right, that's enough.
Not Gen Z.
All right, first of all, you work at, you're like, what are you, 20?
Yeah,
like,
barely. Probably barely.
Guess what? You work hardest when you're young at the beginning. I worked in a stinking pizza restaurant in the coffee industry for like 5+ years, and then guess what? I was basically an indentured servant in the United States Navy for another 5 years, and I already had a bachelor's degree in student debt. Like, you don't just get marketable skills, okay?
Right.
Like, you have to make positive life choices, my friend.
And I don't think she's not even talking about like really Gen X and like boomers. She's really like millennials. We've been working for close to almost 20 years now, right? Like, I mean, we've been
yes, very
working
much so.
age, right?
20 years.
So what's interesting is the pushback I saw online of this, talking about how hard it is to survive and do this, which is interesting to me. I think that the pushback that I saw, let me kind of zoom in on this. Somebody said that, you know, quit crying. We all had roommates at 18 to 24 years old and had to figure it out when the bank account was low and it was still 3 days until payday. I need these kids to stop acting like nobody before them went through a struggling phase. And I'm thinking like, man, you know what? Actually, yeah, I remember being 20 years old. I remember being 21 years old and like not being able to pay my rent on time because I worked retail. Like, I made less than $2,000 a month.
I had the thought the other day when I filled my gas tank up, I wonder how long it's been since I've run out of gas in my car. Because that's a thing that used to happen to me.
Yes! Okay,
like,
how many times? Yeah, if you haven't run out of gas because you didn't have money for gas, you haven't started working in your life.
I was putting $5 in my tank at a time for a solid 6 years.
Right?
And that's after, like, I mean, that was
unless
like,
you were Liberto and Nick was literally just taking seats out of his car.
Yeah, Nick was like sitting on a milk crate in his Toyota Corolla. Like, don't talk to us about your struggles. I'll talk to me after 2 financial crises. Now listen, I want to be a little generous. You know, yes, you know, you are dealing with absolutely barbaric inflation prices right now.
Yes,
and to be
that's
fair,
also
I don't know how anybody can live because, you know, how much I make is public knowledge, but like, you know, that ain't the same as what it was even when I graduated college. Like, I used to dream about making the amount of money that I made now because people who I knew who made the amount of money that I make now were living very, very well. That is not the case anymore. Right?
That's right.
I mean, and the short answer to her video is no. You shouldn't, honey, and we don't expect you to make it on your own right now. You need a couple roommates. You need to go live in your parents' basement. You need to maybe work 2 jobs, and by the way, more than 40 hours a week, because there was multiple times where I was working 2 or 3 jobs. And check back in 5 years, and we'll let you know how you're doing.
Or here's another pro tip: go on YouTube instead of making videos for YouTube, and watch a couple CompTIA A+ certification videos.
There you go.
And get yourself an IT cybersecurity certification. Go work that Walmart job. Take 1 whole paycheck. That's all it's going to cost you. 1 whole paycheck, right? Maybe
Pay
2.
for a cert.
Yeah. Buy yourself 1 IT certification, and then go on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and then walk yourself into a Best Buy and say, I got one of these, and this says I'm supposed to make this much money. And at least then you're negotiating in the $50,000, $60,000 range,
and there's
instead
so
of
many,
just like
so many things that you can do to better, like, and that's also the thing, like, you're working at Walmart, and hopefully she doesn't have any college debt, but likely she does.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, get a degree in something that actually is going to pay you.
engineering
Like,
or medicine. Otherwise, just don't.
Otherwise, just get certification or learn a trade. It just seems like that. Also, I think one of the things I wanted to bring up that I thought was very interesting about the pushback that has been this generation was if you look at the protests that were happening on campus in I think this was UCLA. I thought this was pretty funny. Some of the list of demands that they had to be shut in. This is an interesting thing. Like, look,
can you blow it up
I'm
more?
not taking a political stance on this, but I just think, like, generationally, how did people used to protest? Back in the 60s and the 70s, people would literally just have peace protests, or maybe they would go crazy and they'd have basically just they do drugs in public or something, whatever it was. But like now we have these students that are barricading themselves into their dorm rooms or into the office buildings at UCLA, and they're like, hey, this is what we need. And there's like airsoft goggles, gas masks, like, hey, please
dude, the
help
food
us.
is
Like, oh yeah, that's the food, right?
is the best. Hot food for lunch. Really
this
important.
is important.
Vegan food, gluten-free food, no packaged food, no coffee, no bagels, no bananas, no nuts. Like, dude, get out of here.
If you're gonna protest, man, protest. This is not a fun.
Convictions.
I mean, this is a hilarious thing. So anyway,
Next.
that's one thing. Okay, so here's an interesting. Here's one more react, and this one has a little bit of language in it. So I want to get your thought. This is more of like, I think it looks like more of the millennial employers employing Gen Zers, and there's a comment that was about coming in for a meeting outside of working hours or something like that. So I want to get your guys' thoughts, reaction on this. So let me bring this up. But yeah, let's see. Let me put the sound on. And let me know what you guys think about this one.
Has to come in for an 8 a.m. meeting. My Gen Z new hire said, ugh, sorry, I can't make it. I have a workout class. Should this be allowed?
My visceral reaction was, are you f***ing kidding me?
No, fully.
I had the same reaction.
It's not from caffeine.
You just started this job. I don't give a flying shit about your workout class. Also, an 8 a.m. workout class is too late. Work out at 6, maybe 7.
Hi, yeah, Natalie. So,
And this is the
we can
guy,
talk about this
apparently.
more later, but I'm gonna address this now. It was made very clear during the interview process that the working hours for this position is between 9 to 5 p.m. Eastern time, and I am on Eastern time. I made that very clear with HR because I have commitments outside of work. I go to the gym, I work out because I care about my health. Sure, I can make a sacrifice to go to an 8 a.m. meeting had I known at least a week before that I needed to go at 8 a.m., not a day before. Also, my workout class starts at 7:30, not at 8, but I didn't know that I needed to tell you that. Okay, let's just say I skipped the gym. 2 things. When can I expect you to reimburse me for my class? And 2, are you going to be paying me from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., or at the very least, let me leave at 4 p.m.? Natalie, if your answer to both of those are no, then there's no discussion needed. I will see you at 9 o'clock today. Also, I sent an email to HR about this and sent them the link to that TikTok video. So just to make things clear.
Okay.
To be
So,
fair.
a couple of things here. Yes, I think that there's a couple of things that you addressed, but go ahead, Josh.
To be fair,
I think there's a preliminary
America
questions.
has a problem here, and I'm not disagreeing with that. Like, I am a big believer in work-life boundaries, especially the older I've gotten. Like, the idea that you're a salaried employee, like when we were coming up, the jobs weren't there. So a lot of us millennials got used to basically saying yes to everything because if you had a salaried position, you were blessed. And so employers could get away with saying, if you're not willing to alter the terms of your employment basically at any given moment of time, then we'll just find somebody else. But now being further down the road, and maybe it's also because I have work experience and I have credentials, so I'm not as worried about getting another job, that, if and I've had issues with employers over things like this, where it's like, no, in the terms of our agreement for employment, you knew like I was going to be going to grad school full time. And that means this, and I'm a drilling reservist. So I'm sorry if you wanted me to be here at this time, that's not going to happen per the terms of our, like, I got no issue with it. If that's actually true, if it's true that that's the standard that was set and the employer is moving the goalpost, well, the employer can kick rocks.
But here's also the thing. The question is this an hourly or a salary position, right? Because it tends to be. But here's the thing. Here's the pushback, right? So a lot of the reaction online to that is like, just fire this guy, find somebody else that wants to. And so like I get both sides of it. So on one side, going with what you're saying, Josh, like it sucks. It's stupid when you have an employer that is ridiculous in their flexibility. They're like, you need to be here at this time when there's been prior conversations about set expectations. Like, totally get that. On the other side of it, I and having a little bit of work experience, like if you're starting out and you're young and you get a job and your boss says, hey, I need you to do this, even if it's a day before, the question that you need to ask is, how much social equity in this company do I have to say no? Right?
But see, you shouldn't have to. I disagree with that.
But here's the thing. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Ultimately, if you're looking at a job as a career or you're looking at a job as just a means to make it by, that's the two perspectives. If you're looking at it as a career and you're saying, like, I want to invest in this, and there is a requirement, because here's the thing: business does not run on 9 to 5. Business runs all day.
No, it does.
Night.
That's
setting
the
those boundaries is important. However, if I'm in a position, me being in a position working internationally, if I have a meeting with Japan or Korea,
but does your job say
that's
you
an
work
expectation.
from 9 to 5, Anderson?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the expected working hours, but ultimately at the same time, it's like, this is my project, right? I need to make sure that things work out.
Oh, yeah,
it's
for sure, Josh.
To me,
you have
right.
expectations.
Now, granted,
that's the difference. Ownership is different,
somebody else
right?
puts it on me.
Correct.
I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
That's the difference between having a higher you're basically choosing what to do with your time. Like, if the job says, hey, it's a salaried position, our working hours during the day are 9 to 5. So when we're talking about things like meetings and those types of things, but if you're running an international deal, you're gonna have to fit that in, which also means that, hey, if I've got to take a 10 p.m. work call, guess who's not coming in at 9 tomorrow? This guy. Right. Like, and I deal with that in my job all the time, where it's like, hey, a part of my job sometimes can happen after hours. Like, family's got to get paid back. My point is this: I hate this. The Army is horrible about this. The military is horrible about this, and corporate America and churches are the worst about this.
Yes.
You cannot throw the mission, my national identity and pride, or my faith to get me to work extra hours for you because you failed to plan or prepare sufficiently. Like, that is wrong. And the idea that, well, this is a career, how much social cap? No. There's just a standard of living. That's what Europe's right. I'll say this. In Germany, it's illegal. It is illegal to send a work email after working hours. It is illegal to call your employees after working hours.
He lives in Germany for 2 years, and now suddenly
it's the difference
between naps.
No. I'm just saying it is the difference between America and why America does so well. We drive very hard, but nothing is free. And when you look, go ahead, Nick.
What do you got?
As a ministry owner, Nick,
I was going to say, I'm not an owner, but as an employer, as the head of the ministry and the one who hires and fires, I would say this is a failure to your point, Hughes, it is the employer's fault. It is the employer's problem, and it is the employer's failure. And I think at its core, employers are not doing a really good job of compensating for alternative generations versus the ones that they're in. And so for us, like, we do say we want you here between 8 to 4 or 9 to 5. But I have an explicit disclaimer on every hiring application and on every, we don't do contracts, but on every, here's what is expected of you. And it is, there are alternative working hours that are not 8 to 4, 9 to 5, and you do need to show up for those. It might be weekends, it might be later hours, it might be conferences at inconvenient times or phone calls at inconvenient times. But then as their employer, I'm like, hey, you know, it's got to balance out. I'm also not trying to be a slave driver. And so, you know, I think from the employer's perspective, they need to do a better job of setting expectations. And to your point, Hughes, being prepared, because I equally work around enough organizations and serve on some boards and even my, you know, other experiences. I'm not going to name drop here. It is incredibly frustrating when someone is not very great at strategy and planning and execution, and their failure and incompetence inconveniences me, because that just drives me up a wall. You can do better.
Yeah, and that's a great place. I'd just say this just even between us, and we cut this out later or not. But that's the thing that where it becomes more, you think it's hard now when you're 20-something years old. You know, what really gets it for me is it's not me you're robbing. Like, I am the man, I am the leader of my family, and I have children and a spouse that depend and expect time from me. And so, you know, hey, you know what? The idea that it's just how much do I want to invest in this? Well, no, the terms of the agreement were what I can invest. It's what I gave you. It's what I budgeted for you. The rest goes to the other higher requirements in my life. So the assumption that, like, I'm just going to pull from my excess, that's not real.
I think this is also a interesting distinction between generations, right? When you have the boomer generation that worked for one company for their entire life, right? They worked for the same company from beginning to end and didn't work for anybody else, right? There was some sort of stability. There was such a thing as loyalty. There was a avenue for promotion. And so it wouldn't surprise me, it doesn't surprise me that the older generation is like, look, you do what you got to do. Like, you work hard, you get paid for it, you get the reward. But here's the thing, if the reward system isn't there and there isn't compensation, like, obviously we're not dealing with a one for one situation, right? So what's interesting to me is that even in today's business, right, executive, in the civilian world at least, there is almost an expectation that if you want to get a significant raise, you want to go from making, you know, $50,000 to $80,000. There is no way to do that internally, normally in corporate environments. What you have to do is get promoted into a position that has a higher title, work for at least a year or two, that getting a slight promotion, right? So maybe you're going from, and this is way low numbers, but you're going from 50 to 65,
15%.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
15,
something
20%.
like that, right?
Yeah.
And you now in order for you to get to that $80,000 mark, you have to jump ship. You have to change companies, and businesses expect that. They expect that. And that's huge, actually, in the defense contracting industry, where these contractors will jump between Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and SAG and all these other government contractors for $5,000 more a year, because that's how you make more money until you get to the amount that you're winning. But so it's interesting to me that this generation that kind of looks at and say, well, you need to be there, you need to work, you need to invest, and very much like the position that I was portraying in the beginning, it's almost as if they don't really get it. They don't understand that businesses no longer operate like that. They expect a turnstile, right, or like a revolving door for their business. You get what you can out of a person, but don't expect them to stay beyond 5 years. And
Josh,
generally that seems to be the case.
The last thing I'll say on that is, like, that's one of the fundamental differences between, like, even what Nick is doing, right? Like, what Nick took on was basically a startup, right? It was a ministry that was in one state.
We can do a whole video about that.
You had to build it up, right? So the issue, though, is it's about equity, right, and ownership. If it's mine, if I own it, which means that I get to reap the rewards for its success or failure, then I get to decide how much I want to give for that, because I alone will reap the benefit for it. or I will reap a portion and pre-measured. So that's why, like, in startup culture, this idea of like bootstrapping and like, hey, we're gonna move into the office and we're gonna burn the candle at both ends. Well, yeah, because you're not working for whatever the pay is. You're working for equity. And when you have equity, that's the difference. But when you're working for $60,000 a year and like 4 paid work days off, you know, every year,
Yeah.
like, well, I'm sorry, you're wanting me to sacrifice, like, and then of course you're dealing with inflation. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Nick. Employers need to do better. Like, compensation needs to be more creative. Companies need to get out of this mindset of like, this is how it's done, and do it the way that makes sense. That gets the most out of the people that they have.
There's also a mindset, though, of this younger generation that's working that says, kind of looks at it like, well, this company's not at risk. This company's a big company. It's going to be around forever. So why should I care about whether it succeeds or not? It's just a guaranteed paycheck that I'm getting. But what we're seeing, at least even in big tech, is there's a huge layoff rate that is happening it's like year over year over year, and people are getting laid off. And I can tell you that there's been a shift, at least in the private sector and big tech and big corporations, where it's like, whoa, we might get laid off because the business didn't do as well as it was projected to do. It's kind of important that we invest in the company because we want to keep our job. At the same time, you might be doing that and end up getting laid off anyway. So because of the numbers.
No,
so
it's right.
It
happens.
You know.
And if you haven't read any of Simon Sinek's books, I would highly encourage it, because he directly addresses this. And, you know, Start With Why, Leaders Eat Last, excellent, The Infinite Game, excellent books around how companies need to do better and be better, and how employees need to equally do the same. So, yeah, I think this is really relevant to our world today. And if the Walmart TikTok lady, honey, if you ever catch this episode, we feel for you, and we understand that you can't have everything that you want. You may not understand that yet, but you will soon. And for those of you listening, the same goes.
Always get what you want.
What you want.
This has been
This is
another
my
great
mind too,
episode
man.
of the I'm Telling God About This Reacts. Good talking to you guys.
All right, gents.
I don't wanna work my tail end off, wasting all of my life working just to barely be able to pay all my bills. Alright, that's enough. First of all, what are you, like 20? Yeah, barely. I don't wanna work my tail end off, wasting all of my life working just to barely be able to pay all my bills. Alright, that's enough. First of all,